Hi, my name is Andrew Sears, and I'm the president of City Vision University. And Alvin Sanders has asked me to share with the Urban Ministry Training Collaborative some of the information that I've shared with him on technology and innovation strategy for urban ministry training organizations. So to do that, I want to give a little bit of background about City Vision University and my own background. City Vision is under the parent organization Tech Mission, and we were founded in 2002 with all of our founding board members coming from CCDA Ministries. We have roots from CCDA, the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions. I myself grew up in about half black, half white communities. Grew up going to the black church, and in college I was made fun of because I was a white guy, but I talked like I was black. So have largely been bicultural, and have spent about 12 years operating out of a Latino church in Boston. So, we have a lot of different roots in the urban community. So our core values are Jesus, justice, and technology. And some of the history. So we've had past collaborations with CCDA for about 5 years. We were one of the main conference sponsors and helped them with their tech strategy. Urban Youth Workers Institute. Whenever Larry Acosta was there, we worked some with them. World Vision USA, the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions, and Citygate, and Bakke Graduate University. We worked all with them around some early tech initiatives, and we're currently collaborating with World Impact. In City Vision University, just to give you a little bit of the background, is it was initially founded as a program of the Association of Gospel Rescue Missions. Tech Mission took it over in 2008 and pivoted our whole organization around the school. So it got accredited in 2005, and we pivoted the whole organization around City Vision, and it grew from about 30 students now to it had 30 students in 2008 to about 400 students now. And the way I describe City Vision University is we're a non-majority culture accredited accredited Christian university founded by Urban Ministries for Urban Ministries. And just a little more of my background. So I grew up poor in the hood in Kansas City. I've lived in at-risk communities for about 40 of my 50 years. I went to MIT in grad school while most of my friends were getting arrested or getting addicted to drugs in high school. My drug of choice was workaholism, so that took me to MIT. I co-founded a research group with one of the fathers of the internet, did.com, and realized that my heart was more from, focused on the community where I was from. And so I focused most of my life around serving at-risk communities. And that's really where the values of Jesus, justice, and technology come from. So the Jesus, justice just comes from my own background of growing up poor, but the technology comes from the other part of that. So how we often work with tech justice ministries or urban ministries is, the way we like to think of the world is these three sectors. And part of what I'd like to do is just provide a map of some of the way we view the world, but I think some of these categories might be helpful for you. So, but the way we often interface is in many ways CCDA and other groups like Association of Gospel Rescue Missions. People in CCDA often said, "Oh, you guys are like the tech special forces of the Christian community development movement." And what we do is we bring in tech innovation and online education, and what we learn from the community is cultural innovation and practical contextualization. So some of the different categories of groups that we work with. So you have those that are focused on in-person urban ministry training, and you can see some of these initiatives here. And then you have Christian justice online courses, and you can see some of those there. There's association networks and conferences. You have urban immersion and internship programs. You have what I call Christian higher education for justice, and typically these are higher cost, justice-oriented Christian institutions. For us, because we work a lot in addiction recovery, there's Christian addiction recovery, and then there's global relief. And then there's other sectors that we're trying to learn innovation from. So, there's what we call the Jesus Tech sector, and there's a lot of Christian free and open courses, and these are groups that justice organizations can learn from, but we try to kind of translate some of the best practices from those: online Christian education, commercial Christian courseware, and then unaccredited alternative ordination training. And then there's what we call the tech justice sector, and that's where they're bringing in ed tech innovation. So these are, a lot of the free courses and some of the disruptive innovation opportunities. So these categories might be helpful in also just serving as sources to learn from. So one of the other things I thought might be helpful is just to provide, for those that are in the Urban Ministry Training Collaborative and some of the other key initiatives that I'm familiar with, it might be helpful to categorize the different types of offerings and the different focus areas of, the various partners and other groups that are out there. So I categorize the initiatives, and each group has a different focus area. So there's CCDA, focused on Christian community development; Urban Youth Workers Institute, focused on Urban Youth Workers Institute; World Impact, urban pastors and churches; Urban Church Planning, to foster urban leadership initiative; and then I think Citygate's a key potential player here, and City Vision. And we're really focused on nonprofit urban ministries. And then there's in-person activities, so conferences, peer network, local courses and intensives, immersion, sometimes coaching in person. And then there's online activities. And this has really been growing a lot in the past 5 or 10 years. So coaching, online resources, could be videos or articles or podcasts, online courses. And then there's other things that might be in multiple categories. So curriculum, certification, path to credit, or degrees. And you all may have other ideas for different categorizations, but I thought this might be helpful. And you can let me know if there's other categories, or if I have someone miscategorized. So one of the things that I thought about with this being called the Urban Ministry Training Collaborative. So what are the opportunities for collaboration? And part of what I realized the group is trying to do is figure out, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, and what entrepreneurs are always trying to do is, okay, what's the big opportunities? And I think that the group is trying to kind of wrestle with that right now. So it could be around in-person training and events, so joint conferences, pre-conference intensives and workshops at each other's conferences, co-marketing, cross-promotion, credit recognition. Could be around online training resources, credit recognition, what I'll describe as unbundling and rebundling each other's content, reselling each other's courses, possibly with revenue sharing, co-marketing, cross-promotion. Then there's other opportunities, doing joint grant, joint advocacy, serving on each other's boards or advisory boards. And, I think a key question for the group is, what are the top collaboration opportunities? And kind of the focus of my presentation is to make the case that credit recognition might be one of the top 3 collaboration opportunities. Now, Alvin Sanders, he really likes this diagram. So if you talk about education, a lot of times in training, a lot of times the only thing we see is the tip of the iceberg. So, and that's Christian higher education. So there's one category, City Vision and emerging providers. And then you have Christian liberal arts and mega universities, and you have Bible schools and seminaries. But what I think is really significant is looking at this next tier. So I call it the non-traditional but accreditable education. That could be courses, internships, curriculum, certification, ministry experience, intensives, immersions, and coaching. And these are things that might be able to get credit. And then there's a lot of other things that's non-traditional and it's not accreditable. So podcast, articles, just random videos or books, peer network, workshops. And, historically, this accredited education in serving urban communities really has the dominant strategies, but been what called Du Bois's talented 10th of targeting the kind of the top 10%. But we want to serve 100% of the community, and I think that this under the iceberg's really often been focused more on the other 90%. So what I'd like to do is go into some of the key things. So I did my doctoral work on disruptive innovation in Christian higher education and the poor. And what it really was looking at is, if we're going to serve urban communities and we're going to reinvent higher education, how would we do that? So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the key concepts with that. And a lot of the materials I'm sharing is kind of around, the past 20 years of research that I've done in this space. So traditional degrees often follow what's in the technology world called a vertically integrated product strategy. Versus horizontal. So an example of vertically integrated, and you can think of these, one provider, it's expensive and seamless, and they provide all the components. So an iPhone or a Mac in traditional university degrees. But then you have horizontal modular products, and these are multiple providers. So Android is provided by a lot of different vendors, and the components come from a lot more vendors. And Windows is the same type of thing. And there's a new category of degrees that I call unbundled or rebundled degrees. And part of what's interesting about this is, if you can afford the iPhone, and if you look globally, really the iPhone is targeting the top 10% globally, or maybe even less, maybe the top 1% globally, or 5% of income. But these models target really the rest of the world. So whenever we're talking about how do we serve the rest of the 90%, this unbundled, rebundled degree starts to be really important. So let me talk a little bit more about that. And I'll use an analogy of, traditional toys, where monolithic is another term for, bundled. So bundled degrees. And I want to talk about, what does it look like to unbundle? So the best example is Legos. But one of the key principles on Legos is that whenever you have unbundled training, you just have random videos, you have random, podcasts or, different articles. Those are like, just single Lego blocks. And the value of those is the lowest. Now, once you start to bundle those into kits and you say, okay, we're going to have a training program, that has a lot more. So, and I looked up the value of, how much does it cost to get a Lego kit? But the most valuable here is whenever you combine, credit with a degree, and that's kind of the equivalent of branded Legos. So how can you use some of what you're providing and add a brand to it? And this is actually the most expensive Lego products, where it's 80 cents per brick, is a Lego Harry Potter kit. So this is important whenever you're thinking about your strategy, because a lot of urban ministry training organizations, they're putting out tons of content, but they're not making any money off of it, and it's not honestly very usable. So these type of things are a lot more usable, and this is just, a bunch of random, training that's hard to find. And we learned this at City Vision in Tech Mission, because back in 2008, we were the second most visited Christian organization that was serving, at-risk in urban communities. We were number 2 after World Vision. Number 3 was Salvation Army, and we had a website called urbanministry.org, and we had 100,000 Lego bricks. The reality was we couldn't support that because there's no way we could continue to maintain all that content. So we started to realize we needed to move up into this space, is what we did. So what does this look like, on a more granular level? So, looking at the levels of unbundled and rebundled content. So, all of you will probably provide articles. You may have videos or podcasts. You may have books, have curriculum or self-paced courses. And what you're doing is you're kind of moving up into, larger bundles. Then you might have courses, and in this case, the courses are with an instructor, and it's actually time-based. If it's self-paced, I kind of put it in the self-paced category down here. And then above that is credit recognition, and then above that is accredited courses, and then an accredited program. And coming back to the Lego analogy, as you move up here, you get increased value, and you're able to make more money and more life change, really, to the audience that you're serving. So another way of framing this is, looking at how degrees have traditionally worked. And degrees are traditionally, in traditional, what I'd call a vertically integrated university, it's combining 4 things. And, you all are familiar with the head, the heart, and the hands. So the head, the heart, and the hands. I'm putting that in learning terms. It's, the heart is in the affective domain of learning, and that's what is called transformational learning, usually is the best category for that, and it's a transformational experience. Then you have cognitive learning, which is knowledge and content, and then you have this metacognition and skills, which is a practical synthesis, kind of correlates to psychomotor, but not always exactly. And then you have the degree, which is the access to opportunity. So what's important is if you unbundle this, then you can start to dramatically reduce the cost for things. So with City Vision, what we've done is with our courses, we're rebundling a lot of different things that's out there to reduce our course content, but we also work with a lot of unaccredited training partners, and this could be like yourself. So we're working with World Impact, but other groups, Christian Leadership Alliance, YWAM, and groups like that. And then we provide other things, so project-based skills, internships, and then we have degree completion programs, credit recognition. And all these are unbundled and rebundled by City Vision. But what we've learned over time is these top 3 things can be done fairly well online. But this last thing about transformative experience, and some of you have these transformative experiences, like urban immersions or mentoring or things like that, that's among the best in the world. And there's or in-person trainings that it's just really difficult to do that as effectively online. So we realize that, and we believe in transformation. So what we've done is we've partnered. You could use the term unbundled, and we work with a lot of different groups. So 75% of our students come from our partners, and that could be transformational urban ministry training. So that could be like DeVos Initiative or CCDA or Urban Youth Workers Intensive. It could be internships and immersions. And we have a lot of staff at community and ministry partners. So, what we're really trying to do is change the face of urban ministry training, urban ministry education, and to kind of blur the lines between higher education and, non-traditional training. So another way of framing this is looking at the changing higher education landscape. So I got a 2x2 matrix. So you have majority culture, non-majority culture, and then you have secular and Christian. And, the biggest groups are traditional government-run institutions. So these are the state universities and state schools. And then you have private schools. And then you have traditional Christian colleges, but they're Christian, but they're generally majority culture. And then you have non-majority culture that are secular. So you have trade and vocational schools, you have community colleges, and I would say those are more class focused. And then you have historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, minority serving institutions that are race focused. And then the new groups that are emerging, these secular mega universities like Arizona State, Southern New Hampshire, Western Governors, and then you have Christian mega universities like Liberty and Grand Canyon. And these are the groups that are really transforming things. Now, here's the challenge is, what about this sector here of non-majority culture Christian institutions? Well, for the most part, that's been largely relegated to non-traditional education where you just don't get credit. So if you look at non-majority culture Christian higher education, how big is that sector? It's tiny. And a lot of the schools, barely have capacity. Now, online education presents an opportunity to transform that. And I think that this group has the potential to move here. And I think that's something that we could collaborate on. So, using the framework of majority culture versus non-majority culture, this is kind of the way the old world work is. Majority culture education dominates from critical mass and recognition. What you're showing here, the fact that non-majority culture Christian higher or Christian training is not ever accredited. That's basically the definition of marginalization. And why I really care about this is a way to get some of the training that you're doing to be less marginalized and to help, those that you're serving. So, so majority culture education dominates from critical mass and recognition, and, non-majority culture training struggles from being scattered and not recognized. So you can see the big fish is eating the small fish. So what I believe the real opportunity here is in this diagram. So if we can collaborate and we can get organized in non-majority culture training and education, we can dominate through collaboration and recognition. So, one other way of thinking about this is I believe that there's 3 different frameworks for urban ministry training. And I think it's important to recognize, because a lot of times there's mutual misunderstandings and judgments between these sectors. Most groups are going to be either race-focused, class-focused, or globally focused. So, a lot of what, are called urban ministry trainers are in a category that I would call race-focused. So that's, CCDA and a lot of urban ministry training focused. Now, a lot of Christian colleges, they are more justice-focused Christian colleges, they're kind of between the race-focused, and this is U.S. Race conversation, and a globally focused conversation. Then you have other groups that are, almost entirely globally. So that's like Lausanne Cities, Bakke Graduate University, YWAM, Global Relief Organizations. Then you have groups that are more class-focused. So Salvation Army and the Rescue Mission, they serve the most destitute that's out there. In City Vision, we grew up in this community out of CCDA, but we inherited a school that was class focused. We're kind of, a little bit in between, but I would say we're a little more on the class focus. And even as an institution, so we are considered a minority serving institution, but we also, because the majority of our students get Pell Grants, we're considered a low income serving institution. And I would say we're even more a low income serving institution than we are a minority serving institution. So, what's the vision is for, if we got organized and became this organized fish, is that, we could collaborate and you'd have World Impact, CCDA, Urban Youth Works Institute, DeVos, City to City, other trainers. And then, we could collaborate on some standards on credit recognition, and we could create a fatter pipe to get credit recognition. And this isn't just for City Vision, although I think City Vision will be a attractive path. But other schools, CCDA schools, seminaries, Bible colleges, and ordinations, and a lot of our partners, City Vision will be the first partner to recognize credit. But then, in going through the process with us, they're able to use that same framework to get credit from others out there. And the reality is, for a lot of groups like World Impact, because of the values alignment, because of our affordability, a larger portion of World Impact's Urban Ministry Training Institute students go to City Vision, and they have a lot of success. So what are some of the steps for credit recognition? You need to have a basic syllabus. You need to have some form of assessment, like a final paper, quizzes, with at least a pass-fail review. Be able to calculate your total training hours. So, the formula that Department of Education requires is about 40 to 45 hours of activity per credit. The ability to provide something that it, could look like a transcript or some record of completion. And we have a form that's our non-traditional credit evaluation worksheet. And for a lot of you, I think the best way to do this would be to offer two versions. It's like the standard and the gold, version. And this could be with your coaching, it could be with your immersion, it could be with your intensives or courses. And you have a non-credit version that's just primarily relational interaction. And then you could have a credit version where you might do something like add 1 to 3 books and writing 1 to 3 papers for review, or it could even just be one paper. And, really the vision here would be to create, if you remember the old PCs, whenever they used to advertise plug and play, where you could just plug in something new. Now everything's plug and play, but where you'd have plug and play standard for urban ministry training credit recognition. And, I think that if groups worked with City Vision, those would also help with other schools. So some of the examples of credit recognition, the Urban Ministry Institute of World Impact, their local trainers use their curriculum. They have Toomey Online, and we recognize 32 credits. So with University of the Nation, they have 25,000 students, and we can recognize up to full degrees, but typically 20 to 90. We've worked with a lot of other groups out there, online courses, Third Mill, Harvest Time, Sailor Academy, YWAM, University of the Nations Online, Vision International. And a lot of these are video and open textbooks with standardized quizzes. We've worked with a lot of partners to recognize their own training modules. And then Salvation Army, we've recognized some of their training. So, all this is, why is credit recognition, why should that be one of the key initiatives to consider that might be the, in the top 3 opportunities for the Urban Ministry Training Collaborative? Well, number one is it gets the partners of the Urban Ministry Training Collaborative to focus on adding structure and creating larger bundles of training that will bring in more value and revenue. So that in itself is going to be valuable. The second is, as more training goes online, it becomes much easier to recognize credit because technology provides the structure and paper trail needed. So an example is YWAM. It used to be impossible to do that until they got all of their all of their students in an online system. And once that happened, it was very easy to grant credit for them. The third is it's going to help our urban ministry training and our students become less marginalized through paths to degrees. Fourth, it serves as an effective path to Indigenous leadership development to those without degrees. Fifth, it moves partners towards a more modular unbundling, rebundling strategy and architecture that will likely open up a lot more avenues for collaborations. For example, if we all start to get courses, you can start to think of, okay, there we have a bunch of Lego kits that we can assemble into a Lego city, or we can have Lego bricks that, different groups could use. And six really is it provides a complement to the Talented 10th Elite Education Strategy with a more vibrant ecosystem of non-majority culture, Christian higher education, urban ministry training, with a grassroots focus for the other 90%. So some of the other things to think about, if this is something that you all want to do, it's going to require more structure in the organization. It's going to require, finding people who are who are organized to help do this. And that's going to be, important because, I realize, having grown up in an urban community and worked in, worked with a lot of urban ministry training organizations, the strength of the urban community in the training is the dynamic flexibility and kind of this nonlinear creativity. But that's often on the other end of the spectrum from like highly structured. But accreditors, that's what they require. So, so some of what you'll need to do is assess, is it going to be helpful to add structure, or would it detract too much from the strengths of the training? I think about how, say, DeVos training works. And I know that a lot of that is highly dynamic trainers. Well, how do you, is it going to put them in a straitjacket if you try to make them meet the needs of accreditors? And you have to think through that. The other thing is, technology is becoming increasingly important. Online is becoming increasingly important for urban ministry because of the savings in cost and the time flexibility it provides. I think that the transition from in-person to online is going to be like what's happening with retail. Retail is not going away. You have, still the big box stores, but they have a decreasing market share compared to, say, Amazon. And as you have these generational transitions of leadership, it's going to be really important to think about this as a critical cultural change, and that's part of what we're doing with World Impact. Is Alvin said, he wants to make this cultural change to become a dominant culture of digital natives, where the dominant culture has been digital immigrants, and sometime and as this generational change is happening, that's going to need to happen with most urban ministries. So some of the questions for discussion. Would credit recognition for some of your intensive programs be of interest to your audience? And if so, which segments? Number two, would it be viable to provide a second, upgraded or gold version of your intensive training, your intensive programs that could lead to credit? What barriers or challenges would your organization have if it considered something like this? What other opportunities for collaboration might be opened up by pursuing a more open, modular content and training strategy? And what questions or concerns would you have in exploring these possibilities? So hopefully this can help get you started. I also want to leave you with kind of a teaser of some resources that might be helpful, and I'm going to include a link to this presentation. And if you click on the links in the presentation, it'll give you these resources. So I have 3 resources that might be helpful, and you could use these for training in your organization if you said, I want to help move us towards digital immigrants. And these could all be, send these out to your staff and have them read them and then have a staff discussion around them. So the first resource is actually a white paper I wrote particularly for urban ministry training organizations, and it's called Understanding Technology and Culture. And the idea is if the neighborhood demographics have changed, the neighborhood, so to speak, so we now live in a tech world, our organization and cultures need to adapt. And that's really what that's about. I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but if you want to, get this, you can click on this link. The other is a book called Dual Transformation Strategy. And really what this is kind of saying, we're going to have this, one side that's going to be digital immigrants, the other side that's digital natives. And this often aligns with in-person programs and online programs. And then you have different ways to do innovation: incremental innovation, disruptive innovation, and and this is the framework that we're using and working with World Impact and their TUMI sites, that's in person, and TUMI online. And I have links here to the book, a summary of the book, and a video summary that you could use again, with staff if you just wanted to send them the summary and the video summary. And then the last one is the lean startup process, and summary and video summary. But the idea is, as we do these things, we need to be figuring out, okay, what is what they call the minimum viable product. So you build that, you quickly, try some small experiment, you learn from that experiment, and then you pivot. So as an organization with CityVision, one of the main things we're trying to do is figure out how do we maximize our loop iteration speed. So how can we do an experiment? And this is part of what we're also doing with, World Impact is, is they're launching TUMI online. So how can we go through a lot of cycles of this so that we rapidly iterate to figure out, how to rapidly improve TUMI online? Because if, each iteration you improve by 20%, if you can do 3 iterations in a year, then you're going to improve a lot more. And that's a lot of what this is about. So hopefully this is all helpful. I look forward to, talking and meeting you all in person. And if you have any questions, you can send me an email. Thanks.